Hey everyone, it's Sheriff Armbrister. I'm your host from the View from 100 podcast. Before we begin, I want to let you know that today's episode includes a very pointed discussion about suicide and suicide attempts, and they come from a very personal place. We don't want anyone to be surprised, and we want you to be aware so you can make sure you're in a good place as you listen. These are real stories, and the conversation gets raw at times. We're sharing them during the Mental Health Awareness Month to help reduce the stigma, raise awareness, and connect people with hope and support. If this topic is difficult for you, please take care while listening. Feel free to fast forward, pause, or you can just skip this episode altogether. We understand. But do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. If you've lived through something similar, our hearts are with you. The goal of this episode is to help others and move this much-needed conversation forward in preventing suicide and supporting those who are struggling, while also supporting those who have lost loved ones to this silent epidemic. As sheriff, and from my own experiences as a first responder, I know how deeply these traumas can affect families. I also know that my own personal path led me to a very dark place, and that's why supporting mental health for first responders has been my very top priority. My hope with this episode is that we can keep pushing this conversation forward and shining a light on these critical issues so the real discussions like this one in the episode can happen without stigma or fear of judgment. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out. You are not alone. You can call or text the Suicide Crisis Lifeline at 988. It's confidential, it's free, it's 24/7, and it's always there. We'll also share some more resources in the show notes. Please take care of yourself. We need you to be the very best version of you that you can be, and in return, I'll try to do the same. More than happiness, we all deserve peace, and my hope for you is that you're already there or that you're already on the path. Please be well, my friends. There's very few things that are as selfless as coming into law enforcement, into the corrections, coming to a sheriff's office in this day and age.
From the heart of the country in Douglas County, Kansas, this is View from 100, a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement, community, and the stories that shape our county.
It's an honor and a privilege to serve not just the community, but my community. I mean, I was born and raised here.
Hosted by your sheriff, Jay Armbrister, bringing you insights from the badge and beyond.
All right. Welcome back to the newest version of the podcast, View from 100. First thing first, I've got to get some apologies out of the way. I was admonished by my mother and my mother-in-law for the episode with Katie Fitzgerald from the CJCC. See, I'm doing it there, because we spoke mostly in acronyms. It was a lot of letters that people didn't understand, and I was told that I need to be better about explaining things, and I apologize. That's absolutely the truth. I live and work in a world where we are covered up in acronyms, and I forget. So CJCC stands for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, of which Katie is the director. So that's that out of the way. So here we are today for our newest episode, and it's myself and Morgan. I'll let her introduce herself fully, but this is one that I've been looking forward to. Morgan is my favorite person in the agency to talk to anyways, so this works out perfectly for the two of us to have a conversation about the work she does and why she does it, so and why it's important. So we're going to start with the easy stuff.
Yeah.
Who are you, and why are you here? So start with who are you?
Okay, so my name is Morgan Haney. My actual name is Morgan Shockley Haney, for those who do know that. I'm a third-generation Shockley in this area. My title with the Sheriff's Office recently changed, so I'm probably going to butcher it. It's Advocacy and Outreach Specialist. So I do a lot of just advocacy stuff, really, than outreach stuff.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I wanted more than that.
Oh yeah, I can go more. I can talk.
So, well, I tell you what, I'll get to the rest of it. I'll just I'll lead you down that path here in a minute. So, why are you here? What is it that brought you to the sheriff's office, and what keeps you here?
Okay. So I went to KU and I got a degree in social work, and I wanted to be a social worker as long as I can remember. Like 4th grade, they asked, what do you want to be? I was like, I want to be a social worker. And it ended up me trying a lot of different avenues to figure out what fit. So I did work with the unhoused population for an extended period of time.
Was that in the Lawrence area or somewhere
Yeah,
else?
I at the Lawrence homeless shelter when it was back on Kentucky Street.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
That's where I used to work. I did like all my college time throughout there. And I found out like that wasn't the population I wanted to work with. It's just a really hard population to be with.
It is.
It's just a lot of like revolving doors
Yeah.
of people. And so I decided I wanted to work with kids, mainly kids with like severe mental health issues. And so I worked at Kids TLC, which is in Olathe, which is like a facility where people stay, like the kids stay. And so I was like a resident hall manager over there and spent time with the kids. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. But it's really hard to work with kids when they're forced to be there.
Sure.
So I left that, and then I became a case manager down in Franklin County.
Okay.
And that one was also very hard because that's down there. There's like these really small towns, and there's a level of poverty that I had never seen before, like
Sure.
those Rantoul and Lane areas.
Absolutely.
And so it ended up being not doing casework really. It was just providing basic services to kids, which was just feeding them and letting them sleep. And so sometimes my case management was just giving them a safe place to sleep and some food. Around that time that I was down there, my mom died, unfortunately, to lung cancer. And I just realized like life was really short and I wanted to be doing something where it felt like change was happening.
Sure.
So my husband at the time, still my husband, I should say that. We're still married. This isn't a divorce outing.
Sorry.
No, we're still there. He worked for the sheriff's office and he was a corrections officer. No, probably patrol at this time. And he had it in his mind that I could be a dispatcher, a 911 dispatcher, and we would get the same days off. He thought with the sheriff's office with over here, you guys can take off like a few days throughout the month and then have the whole month off just based on your rotations. And he was like, you can do that in dispatch too. And I go, okay, cool. So I joined dispatch. I got hired. I started the process. And then I learned that they have their own rules and you cannot take off as much time as the sheriff's office this side does.
Yeah.
But I ended up really loving it. And it's like social work, but once removed and you can still help people where you're not actively there and seeing it. And I liked it. And then you came into office and there was a training about peer support. And I went to that training and I just wanted to be a peer support person for dispatch. But that training, it sounds so dramatic, but it changed my life. And I realized like, I don't want to be on the phone anymore. I want to be with the people and helping them.
Sure.
I want to be boots on the ground, helping the people that I work next to.
Yeah.
So I came to you and Stacy and I said, hey, do you have room for me? And we started this process into creating this position.
Yep.
So really what it boiled down to was I was just tired of watching like people that I knew suffering, and the peer support training taught me how to help.
Sure.
And I just really wanted not to watch my family drown, which was happening. I mean, my husband had been in the field for several years, and I was starting to see the effects of that. And then, I mean, I have brother-in-laws and cousins and family and friends, and I just wanted to do something different, help them.
Well, I think you're probably not prepared to do it either, but we're going to talk about your dad real quick, who was a first responder himself. He was a volunteer. So I knew your dad through working at Hallmark. He worked out there with my dad for 1,000 years, but I also knew him through his other world of demolition derby that I used to partake in, and he was the head official. And so I got to meet your dad, Willie, through that. But then it wasn't until I actually got on the road in the streets and started responding to things that I started seeing him on calls. He was, I believe they used to call it Canwalka, or was he?
He was in Lecompton.
Lecompton, that's what. Okay, which was all volunteers. So, and he drove this old flatbed, square body, blue Chevy pickup that I knew was Willie's coming down the road. So it was really nice to have somebody that I knew, and it wasn't until years later that I saw your name hyphenated that I put it together, and then you told me that was your dad. So did that have any? I mean, did the fact that your dad would leave in the middle of the night and respond to these kind of things?
Yeah.
I mean, we always do There's always some family piece to everything we do.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't want to. I'm not going to go down that road. But obviously, your dad's no longer with us, and that makes things hard for both of us. Especially for his daughter. But how do those two worlds kind of live together in getting you into this, but also making it your passion? Or is it just the fact that you just really like doing it?
Well, I already warned you that I would probably cry just because it is hard to talk about Dad.
And I already told you you're not going to cry alone. That's my rule.
Which is good. I have a very vivid memory when I was like probably 12 or 13 when Papa came home. Well, I was asleep and I woke up in the middle of the night and I came out into the living room. It's already going to make me sad.
Mm-hmm.
And the lights were on in the living room. The lights were on in the kitchen and the TV was on, but it was muted. And Papa was sitting and just staring at the TV, dead silent.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember coming around and being like, Papa? And he didn't look at me. And then looking again and going, Papa? And then he finally judged that, like he tracked that I was there, but he didn't look at me. And he goes, Morgan, you're never going to forget your first. And that's when it dawned on me. At that time, I didn't know what had fully happened, but I knew that something bad had happened and Papa had seen it. Mm-hmm. And it just has stuck with me all of these years. Like, what did he experience? And looking back, I'm pretty sure what he experienced was somebody perished and didn't make it, which was really hard. And he said a few more things that are just a little bit too much for a podcast.
Sure.
And the next morning I woke up and I said, Papa, are you okay? And he said, yeah, fine, and acted like nothing had happened. So when I started into the 911 dispatching, and I would be the person that was sending my dad out to these calls, and then at times sending my husband out to these calls, it just added this other level of, oh my gosh, they're seeing some really messed up stuff, and I don't know how to help them. I don't know how to talk to them about these things. And so 100% is that why I'm doing this job now, because I just remember my dad, I can't ask him now, but I know he suffered in silence. Like he didn't talk about it with his family. He didn't talk about any of that. And my husband suffered for a really long time in silence before I opened up the door of like, hey, I'm in a space where I can listen. And that's the other part of it. Not every spouse is in the space to handle it.
For sure.
And so it took a lot of years of me understanding what he might say and how I'm going to react to what he might say that got me to this point. But I have trauma in my life for various things, and I know that they're carrying trauma. And by they, I mean my DGSO family. They're carrying trauma, and anything that we can do to support them through that. That's just like all I care about.
Well, it was an easy hire for us, but I feel, and that was where I was trying to get to with the earlier question: is who are you? Is that your roots put you in a special position to be what we like to call a peer. You know, I'm a huge advocate of the peer model. You know, I can stand in front of a room full of incarcerated individuals and tell them how they need to be better. And there's programs out there, and if you just do this or just do that. And they are not going to listen to me because I've never lived that life. I've never chewed that dirt. But if you bring somebody in like Artists Helping the Homeless and some of our advocates who have been there, can talk through that and then say, here's what I did that worked, they're going to listen to that person. And the same thing goes for the peer model when it comes to first responders especially. But the fact that, A, you had the drive and the ability, you had the background to do it, but also that you deeply cared and loved for first responders in your life, but also that you were a first responder too as a dispatcher. And because I'm a firm believer that dispatchers are the forgotten first responders.
For sure.
And so we're trying to change that culture as we move along. But so you were uniquely, you had a skill set that was hard to put onto paper, but it was also hard to turn away from in this situation. So it worked out splendidly.
And you had that guy in before me. We had somebody that tried to do this position before me, and he did a fine job, but it was not successful because nobody knew him. And so when I transitioned over, I was immediately with people who knew me personally, professionally. It was like walking into a house party is how I would explain it. Like I just walked in and everyone, Morgan,
but
like I'm here.
Crying.
But everyone's crying. A little different.
You know, and he was in a tough situation where he was building something from the ground up. So he was able to get a lot of that foundation built. But you're right. He was working from the negative in that nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew where he had been, what he had done, what he had seen, all those things. So it was a perfect fit. So, of course, we're extremely fortunate to have someone from within the family who also carries this skill. So enough about that. Well, so how, when we talk about peer support and now your role also as an advocate for people, communities within or specific communities out in the community, and groups of folks, whether they be crime victims or just people who have had incidental contacts with law enforcement, but also people who just simply need services. How do you go about building the trust? I mean, we talked about the peer model with your peers. That's kind of built in. But how do you go about, well, I guess let's kind of back up a little bit and talk about what is the other part of your community outreach portion that you do, whether it be the fun events or the hard work?
Yeah.
So what does that look like for you?
So the fun events are obviously the majority of what you see on the social media. Like if we're out in the community doing something, I was most likely had my hand in it in some way of making it happen, which is great. So those are like the school things, retirement homes, that kind of stuff. So that stuff's easy and fun and always positive, it seems. But the other side of what I do is I follow up with people that we have contact with in the community, like DGSO has contact with. And so that can range from domestic violence survivors, which is where a huge chunk of my time goes to. But then also I'll follow up with people who've been in a car accident that just don't know where their car is. And so I'll call and tell them where their car is. Or they found somebody deceased, unfortunately, family members and that kind of stuff. And that stuff is sometimes much, much harder because I'm not necessarily talking to them because it was a good day for them. I'm talking to them because it was a bad day.
Or the worst.
Or the worst day of their life. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So how do you go about building trust with those folks? I mean, how does that look? Because especially coming from, wearing a sheriff's office logo or hi, I'm the government and I'm here to help you, something that people really understand. How do you go about getting buy-in from folks that maybe don't have that level of trust?
I think the biggest thing that helps me is that I'm not law enforcement. So being that civilian piece is really helpful. So sometimes people won't want to talk to me because they think that I have some sort of legal ability to charge them with something or whatever. And I'm just like, listen, I don't care. I'm really just here to talk about you. And so that's how I do that buy-in is I don't care about the specifics. I don't care about, and the fact is I don't care about what the truth is or what really happened. I just care about how your experience went. And so I think that helps out a lot where the first thing I say is, I'm not a cop. I just work next to them. And then also I'm that kind of bridging the gap. If they do have questions that are law enforcement related, I say, okay, I can get you in touch with them or I can have them call you. I think that helps too. I think that helps a lot with the trust. And I follow through. I think that's the other piece of it too. I don't ever leave them hanging. If I say that there's going to be a follow-up, there's going to be a follow-up. And if it's later than I anticipated, I apologize, explain what's going on, but see them all the way through.
And sometimes these folks don't always accept everything or they kind of time out. There may be a follow-up, but they're in a different place that they're not. So, but I guess another aspect of this. So first off, what I learned through my career and what I'm sure you've learned as well is that the criminal justice system, especially when it comes to domestic violence and any sort of person crime, especially within families, it's set up to protect victims, and whether that means arrest or separating people or taking or filing charges, but it's never been very good about walking people through an extremely complicated and
terrifying experience.
And traumatizing, re-traumatizing. And that was where we kind of saw this need because Under Sheriff Simmons, who everybody met on the first, she ended up in the hallway downstairs one day during it was the restraining. We call them PFAs, which is protection from abuse, or PFS is a protection from stalking, but a PFA from abuse is what we would always historically called a restraining order, and so. If somebody files for a restraining order and it's granted, we go out and we serve it to them. They're not allowed to have contact or go to a certain place. But there's always a court date attached to that, and if you want it to stick, you have to go to a court date. But they set them all for the same time, and so you get a bunch of people standing around at this courtroom, not understanding why they're there, what they're supposed to know, or what they're supposed to do. And Under Sheriff Simmons just happened to end up in that group of it was women that day, and they were all asking the exact same questions. What do I need to do? Is he coming? And what does this even mean? What is the judge going to ask me? And she was just so, I mean, and Willow here in town does an amazing job, especially with Shannon Reed as an advocate who will come and work alongside these folks. But on that particular day, they had a lot of questions, and we felt like, man, are we doing a disservice by going out and serving this paperwork and making sure that people are safe, but not helping them through the process itself? And and the courts have always been kind of set up to just operate as they operate, not necessarily taking into account how to get the people into the system.
Yeah.
And so we feel like that was a needed area, and that you've really stepped into and kind of leaned into, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
PFA court can be really difficult because it is a bunch of people in one hallway. And sometimes the victims and the suspects are walking through the court security checkpoint at the same time.
Sure.
And so what I offer to the people that I talk to the survivors, is I'll help you with that process. I can't fill out the paperwork for you, but I can explain how it's going to go, and I can attend court with you. And I think that's been a huge game changer for them, is because I'll attend court with you, but also because I'm in the building, you get to hang out with me upstairs in my office, and the court security guys will just tell me that you're here, that it's your turn, and we'll walk you down. Or we can go into a separate hallway so that you're not just standing there staring at your abuser.
Or being stared at.
And that's been just amazing, I feel like. I've even had people be escorted in and out because the abuser has been so aggressive.
Sure.
But you're right, you have to go. I can't stress that enough. You have to go to court, because if you don't, then they just drop it. It just gets dismissed. So if you want to move forward with the process, you have to give that one time where you might be there with your abuser.
Right. And we always know that a piece of paper is not going to stop somebody from doing something bad. But sometimes that piece of paper is the only thing protecting somebody, and it's very disheartening when we get that in place, and then it doesn't end up being followed through, and it disappears, and then we're kind of back to square one, and that person is being re-victimized, and it's hard not to be like, well, we were here, well, what happened, but we also just don't know what was going on in their life, and how hard it is to just get through the system itself, much less sit there in a hallway with this person. So it's taken a lot of growing on our part to understand this, but to really approach it from a victim-centered and a human-centered place. And I feel like we're making strides. We're not perfect, but we are better.
we are definitely better, I feel. I also like that idea, because one of the questions in here, if you ask it or not, like, one of the hardest things about this job is that it's not black and white. It's really gray. And so if you were to walk past my office while I'm making these calls, there are some victims that I'm talking to where I'm like, absolutely, we're getting you into Willow, you're moving away, you're getting away from the abuser. Awesome. But then I'll immediately call somebody else and they'll say, I want to stay with the person. And then it's a different conversation of, okay, you're going to stay with them. How are you going to stay safe?
Right.
Make sure you call us, those kinds of things. And so I'm not naive in knowing the statistics of domestic violence. I know that the likelihood of them leaving the first time is not going to happen.
Right.
It's going to be several times until they actually find the ability to leave. And I just have to meet people where they're at. And that's the biggest thing. Like, you can call me and tell me that you're going to stay with this person after they violently beat you. And I'm going to go, okay, I'm always available.
Right.
And I've had people reach out to me years later or 6 months later saying, now's the time and I'm ready to go. And I'm just, I don't ever hold the past against them. I go, okay, here we are. Let's go. Let's make the moves that we need to do.
There's no I told you so's.
No, absolutely not. No.
As it should be. So, well, all of this stuff is super heavy and kind of ugly at times.
Yes.
What are some of the good things? What are good memories that you will carry away or have from the work you've done?
So I thought a lot about this, of which ones I wanted to share, because I'm not going to lie that a lot of what I do is heavy and hard.
Mhm.
But one of the best stories I have is that we did an event. This is not, I guess I have, I'm going to do this one. So we had a citizen that we went out to the Stoll Church and we did an event out there,
Mhm.
and we had a citizen that needed help to her vehicle,
Mhm.
and I captured the photo of the deputy helping her to her vehicle. And she wrote in and wanted to write to us and said that we posted it on our social media, and she said that we had made her a superstar,
Ah.
and that at her retirement home everyone was like asking for her autograph because they said, look, you made it on the internet, and thought it was so cool. And so what I ended up doing was reaching out to that retirement home and asking, can we come back and
Sure.
just hang out?
Yeah.
And we now have a standing, we go out there several times a year to talk to these people.
Mhm.
You've been out there several times.
Yep.
Of course, we take the canine because everyone loves the dog.
Don't they?
But that just goes to like that one feels really good because
Sure.
this is a group of people. First of all, they're the most informed group of people
Yeah.
of the county.
Yeah, they're
and
watching.
They know what's happening, and they're the most receptive and respectful, and they just love us coming. We don't go planning. We don't plan anything. We go with donuts and eat and just sit and talk.
we do.
Of course, donuts. But I
Top
think
fuel.
that feels really, really, really good. And
Yeah.
then the other one that I think feels really good is the work that we've put in for the Ballard Center.
Oh my
And we
gosh.
did like playground patrol,
Yeah.
and we went out there, and it's still rolling over where I'll see teachers or kids who will know me
Yeah.
just in different events. And I like that too, because that's a generation that sometimes has a negative outlook of
100%.
law enforcement.
100%.
And it's just nice to see these lieutenants and sergeants and deputies running around playing tag with these
Mhm.
kids and just getting their butts whooped. Like,
Mhm.
our people cannot
Yeah, no.
keep up with
Oh, no.
6-year-olds.
No.
And so
Nobody can.
nobody can. And so it's just, I really like seeing those kids
Sure.
light up when we come around, and to
Yeah.
bring them the same stickers we bring every single time, but they all want to be covered in the stickers. And
Yep.
that feels really good.
Sure. No, Ballard has always had a special place in my heart, especially, and it stems from 2020 when I was in the Leadership Lawrence Academy. What they did was they paired us. They made us maybe a group of 3, but either way, we were basically given a sheet of paper, and it was like, okay, you're a 34-year-old single mother who works at an insurance company as a receptionist or whatever it was, making such and such, and you've just been T-boned, wrecked. Your car is totaled. You have a broken ankle, and you have 2 kids. How do you make rent? How do you pay your bill? And you're going to be off for 6 weeks, and you don't have any paid time out. So we were sent out into the community to try to figure out how we were going to live. And here's a little spoiler alert. One team decided to get arrested because the jail was the best place to get their life back together and get your ID and get some work and get some housing and get that stuff. I don't suggest that for anybody, but that kind of shows you what the work we do out there. But for us, I could get fed 9 times a day and get clothing. Like this community is all on board. But when it came to time to pay my bills, my electric bill, my water bill, there was nothing that we could find. Happened into the Ballard Center to talk to them about daycare, possibly moving daycare over there. And it was Becky Price at the time. She was the head of it. And she was like, oh, yeah, I've got this grant money that I can pay your rent for 3 months, and I can do this. And it just absolutely blew my mind, not only how open she was, but also is like, oh, yeah, if they had kids, we would be doing this, that, and the other. And I didn't realize how many directions Ballard, it's not just a daycare.
No.
They are a life care. And so it just absolutely spun me on my heels, like, holy cow, we've had this little treasure over here in North Lawrence, hiding in the sand for all of these years. And so once we got into office, I was like, those are the kind of places that we need to invest in because they're doing the work. And so they've been a tremendous partner for us. I love seeing all of that stuff. I know it's either way. That's just me talking about how much I love them. So now, I've got a list of questions, but I don't know if we're even going to go. Where do you see your position going? How do you first off, how do you measure success? Whether it be through negatives or positives, and where do you see this going for the next few years? Or many years, whatever.
I don't know how I would measure success. I guess, I don't know if this is too dark, but I mean, none of our people have.
So success would be 0 suicides within our
Yeah,
agency.
I mean, that's exactly what I'm
No,
gonna
that's-
say. Like,
Let's
that's
say
it.
it for what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, I like that because there have been suicidal employees, myself included,
Right.
and we've done the work and we've
Sure.
put in the time,
Yep.
and they're still with us. And so, I mean, that's a success. Every
Mhm.
time that happens, that's a success.
Yeah. No, I think it's always so hard, and I talk about this a lot of times. It's like you can't measure negatives. You can't measure things that never happen. People always want to know, is like, well, I'm paying this much money. What am I getting out of it? Well,
Mhm.
what you're getting is we haven't had anybody kill themselves. You
Yeah.
know, that kind of stuff. You can't measure. It's like, well, how many lives have a seatbelt saved? Well, we don't know because the person didn't lose their life, so therefore we cannot gonculate it. I feel like we operate in that we all know the cost of something happening, but we can't quantify the cost of it never happening. And it's hard to convince people that we need to put resources towards something that is not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so law enforcement so from a law enforcement perspective only, not first responders overall, but law enforcement, they call it blue suicide. And it is killing more officers per year than all others. So officers who are killed in the line of duty, officers who are killed in motor vehicle crashes on duty, you combine those, it's not as many as people that are killing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Our agency has experienced suicide. The Lawrence Fire Department has experienced too many of suicides. And so we're working. Your work, as I'm hearing you say, is to make sure that we don't become part of that statistic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've just, I was a dispatcher when we did lose that person.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that person very well. And to be fair, I'm going to be honest, I think the agency did everybody a disservice during that time. I look back at that time, and I didn't work with him connected, but my husband did.
Mm-hmm.
And just the amount of what the F is happening?
Right.
What are we doing? No one was checking in with our people. No one was, and it happened during the most inopportune moment. I mean, it's always inopportune, but there were so many people that were relying on that person. And they're just left unknown. And we were the people that found them. Yeah. And I think about that. I think about the people that were involved in that and how we have to do better than that.
Yeah. No, we as an agency failed that person's family, and ourselves, and not blaming anybody.
No.
That was before I was sheriff, but the ripple effect, but also there's still a stigma attached to agencies admitting that they've had an individual kill themselves, because one, it used to be that person wouldn't get their full benefits through their retirement if it was a suicide. So they would somehow try to extrapolate it out into an on duty so that the family could get their due. And so it was this kind of hush. We know what happened, but here's what we're calling it, because that's what the family deserves. Well, the family deserves honesty and transparency, but so do the people who were working. And so I think as Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And so that's been a guiding principle that we've operated with for 5 years now, is like, we're going to screw things up, but we're going to get better from them. So, so I'm glad you brought that one up, because we are not here to trash, those that came before us, but that was a unique situation that came up that we just didn't handle quite right. And we hope we never have an opportunity to show that we're better, because
absolutely.
but we do. We're more prepared. But also, we're in a position now where we can help other agencies that may be suffering from something like that. So,
and I just really appreciate that. One of the things I think you did really well was just bringing in the word suicide into a conversation.
Sure.
I mean, I remember when I transitioned over, I met all the shifts, and one of the first things I did was talk about how I had been suicidal when I was in dispatch, and I was very, very close to completing the task. And nobody knew. And these are my friends. And they're just like, well, what was going on? What was happening? And I'm just like, well, sometimes you never know.
Yeah.
Unless somebody talks about it.
Sure.
And I remember somebody I'd known for a decade finding me a few weeks after that and just saying, I've had those feelings before too. Yeah. And now, almost 5 years later, like, suicide is talked about a lot in my daily, it sounds crazy, but it's talked a lot weekly in my work. And then it's talked about with my coworkers, everyone. It's just, it's okay to say that word, because the statistics are like 1 out of 5 of us have felt that.
Yeah.
And looking in this room, I can tell you, I'm one of those people.
Sure.
I'm it.
Yeah,
I'm a
exactly.
statistic.
Well, yeah. So it's funny in this room. At least 2 out of the 4 of us.
Yes.
so I, since we're on the topic of suicide, I'm gonna go on a little tangent real quickly. Having worked patrol and investigations for a combined, I don't know, 18 years or whatever it was, I dealt with suicide firsthand as the person who responded. And so I found myself through my years and my career starting where most people start, in that you think to yourself, what a selfish thing.
Mm-hmm.
The old adage, what is it? A permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I would see these families just grieving and falling apart, or wishing for answers to questions that will never be
Mm-hmm.
answered, and thinking, my God, how can you leave people like this? How can you do this to these people that love you? Somewhere along the way, and I wish I could pinpoint it, but I worked a suicide, and I remember thinking to myself, man, how bad was it that this seemed like a good idea? Like, this was your best option.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, I'm not understanding what was going on. And so that really started to kind of shift how I looked at it and viewed suicide as a whole, because, people do crazy things. They'll make plans for tomorrow knowing they're going to end their life today.
Mm-hmm.
And the family's like, well, they couldn't have killed themselves. They were going to meet me for lunch. No, that absolutely happens. Or he was in such great spirits 2 hours before. You know why? It's because he had made the decision and he felt free finally. And so like these things, I started, as I learned and started to process these things. And then somewhere, post 2015, I I made this full circle to where I began to feel envious, because these people had finally reached that point of peace, of for me, what I always use the term quiet. They finally,
Yeah.
because my head is just nothing but monkeys juggling knives with music playing at all times, and I felt like how I can see how that happens. I get it now, like I really get it. And in my own personal journey, and I've talked about it a lot, I was never actively suicide, but I was ready to be. I wanted to be killed in the line of duty, because I felt like my family deserved to have that hero's send off, but it also got me to where I needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And through the years of like processing that and putting it all together, understanding it, but also seeing it for what it was, it was really just a need for change. I was able to walk myself back into the sunshine, but I still carry suicide in a way that is deeply personal, and I think that we can bring that to these to begin to help the living, and that's because let's face it, the funerals are for living; they're not for the deceased, and so that has been kind of the thing that we want to really narrow down, and is help the people that are left in the wake of this. So, we all talk about our story, and I love that you share yours so openly. And I try to give my perspective as much as I can, but we're just trying to change a culture, because the culture has always been, as we take care of our own, we're ready for the next one, and we don't talk about it because we're way too tough to be hurting the way that we hurt. So that's been a big mountain to overcome. So
I like to talk about suicide in the form of like it happens slowly and then it happens really fast. Like it was, for me personally, it was one of those that it had never been on my mind before, but looking back, like how slow I progressed until it was really fast, and then I was very, very close.
You were there, yeah.
And so it is hard to talk about that time, especially because I was very actively too close for comfort, wanting to end my life. But now when I think about it, because I've been suicidal since then, I like to give the adage that like it's not, for some people, suicide is option 100, but once you've been suicidal, it kind of becomes option 10.
Right.
So it's not always option number 1, but it's definitely up higher than it was.
Sure.
Because like you, all I want when I'm suicidal is for it to be quiet, because it does feel so loud around me. The first time I was really, really close, and I went to the doctor, and I I told my husband, I said, we need to go to the doctor. I'm not feeling very good. And he went into the doctor's office with me, and he asked, the doctor goes, well, Morgan, why are you here right now? And she looks at Andrew, she looks at me, and I'm just like, and I start crying, and I say, if you guys let me go home tonight, I'll kill myself.
Right.
Yeah. I'll never forget the way he looked about it.
Right.
I'll never forget how overwhelmingly what relief I felt that I had finally said something, and how great he was supporting me through that process. So when I became suicidal again, I didn't let it get all the way to that level. It was one of those, like, this is a safe person, I can tell him. Yep. And I came home, and I'd actively in therapy, and we had been trying to work through it. But she had prompted me, like, hey, you need to have a safe person at home. And I came home and I said, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And he just looked me in the eyes and he goes, do I need to hide the guns again? Yeah. And I said, yeah, you do. And he goes, yeah, you just haven't been yourself. And I was just waiting to see. So it's never option number one for me, but it is pretty high on my list. And so I have to be vigilant about it because I do want to live. And so therapy and medication if needed, and a support system, and talking about it. I rely on people to know that I'm suicidal, like when I'm in those moments, because you're holding me accountable. Like if you know that I'm suicidal, you're probably checking in. Sure. If I'm not responding correctly, you're going to be like, hey, is everything okay? And so that's what I need. And so when I work with people, that's what I expect. Yeah. And I've done that before where I'm just like, hey, I'm just your life accountability partner. Sure. I'm just making sure you're staying alive. Yeah. That's
I'm your sponsor.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think, and just talking about it like it's actually a real thing, which it is. It is. It's and the other thing is like only the people who have maybe reached that threshold will understand when somebody comes to them and says, "Well, I'm having these thoughts," and instead of freaking out like a lot of people will do, is like, "Oh my God, what do we got to do? We're gonna get you checked in." It's like you just be like, "Okay, I get it. Let's talk about this, and then let's see where you're at and see if there's something we can do." Don't treat them like they're now an infectious disease. Oh yeah, it's treat them like, hey, I get it. Are you going to do it right this second? Yeah. Yes or no? Because that's going to change. If they say no, then okay, then we're off and running. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to try to help you. And so either way, we could talk for days and days and days and days. So, yes. What else about you and your job do you think the people... So I always like to ask the question, if you could whisper into the ears of every person in this community that something about what you do that you think that they may not know or may not understand, but you could get them to hear you at least once, what would you want to tell them?
I don't know. That's a hard one. Oh, okay. So what I would want people to know, I guess, would just be that, like, trauma's real and trauma's around everyone. Mm-hmm. And we're all people and we're just really trying. Sure. Like, life is really hard and we're all trying. And I think I come at it very interestingly because I'm a civilian, but my family is mostly first responder in my DGSO life. And people see the uniform and they just think that they're not a real person.
They're robots.
Yeah, they're robots, but they're actually real people with real families and experiencing trauma. Sure. And so I guess what I would wish everyone to know is, like, we're human. Yeah. We're here. We're trying. Like, please just know we're trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. So a study I'd heard, and these numbers have been thrown around a lot, but the average citizen within the United States experiences 3 to 5 traumatic events within their life. Yeah. That's, if you live to be 85 years old, 3 to 5 traumatic events. First responders can experience anywhere between 300 to 500 in a career. And so the analogy is always about taking rocks and then putting them in your backpack. And eventually that backpack will either break or it will break your back. And so that's really where the crux of our work is, to try to take those rocks out or learn how to carry them in a more healthy way. Yeah. Or stop putting more in on what's already there. So,
and I like that analogy because I think what I do really well with, like, the victims that I work with and with law enforcement is, like, give me your rocks because they're not mine. So as soon as we're done talking, I'm dropping them. Yeah. You don't have to carry them anymore. You gave them to me, but they're not mine. So I'm just going to drop them. So everyone's going to be lighter when we walk away.
Hopefully.
Like, none of what I do some of it weighs with me for just the weight of the job, but it doesn't weigh with me adding to my trauma.
Sure.
It just, I don't have enough room in my own backpack for everybody else's.
Right.
So like, just give me it for a little bit, and then you're gonna walk away, and I'm just gonna drop that rock, and we're good to go.
God, you're so much healthier than I am. I'm just like, maybe I could fit a bigger backpack,
No, therapy twice a week. Thanks, therapist.
Okay, well, we could talk again, like I said, for hours about all this, but I always like to ask something funny or fun about you that we would all love to know, but my question is simple. It's a 3-part question.
Okay.
What was your first concert?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
What was your most recent? And what was your favorite?
Oh, God. Okay, so my first concert has to be Rockfest. And I was like 14. And
So that would have been what year?
20.
Okay.
No.
Good child.
Yeah, 20-something.
Yeah.
Wait, 20.
2000.
2000-ish. Yeah, 2000.
Oh, boy.
2000. And the only rule was that my mom wanted like 2 out of my 5 sisters to go with me, because then they could like corral me. But then she didn't realize that those were like hoodlum sisters, and so they ran away, and I was just standing all by myself. My most recent concert, I truly don't know. I don't actually really go to concerts very much. It was probably a couple years ago. I took my mother-in-law to like an Irish step dance concert at Liberty Hall. So that was pretty cool. And my favorite has to be a Metallica concert that I went to when I was like at the height of my Metallica life. So I had to have been like 2006, 2007.
Where was it at?
I don't really remember.
Oh, wasn't it like Arrowhead or anything?
Maybe it was really big.
I'm sure.
It was gifted to me by a sister, and so it was just a really good time. Yeah, I love me some good old Metallica.
I saw them in 1989 at Sandstone. It will always be Sandstone, at Sandstone on their And Justice for All tour.
Very nice.
So yeah, I was 89. I would have been 14 years old, and I'd seen my first concert ever. I've said this already. Was Poison in 1987.
Wow.
And it was funny because it was me and 2 friends, but we had to buy 4 tickets so one of their dads could go with us to drive us. So I had to like mow yards, and I had to buy my ticket and a third of another, or a quarter of another ticket. But it was the same thing. We had to buy tickets, and a friend of ours' dad went with us, and he just stood there the entire time, just staring at the stage with his arms crossed. Never broke.
Wasn't
no
into
emotion.
it at all.
He was not having it. Not having it. But he was nice enough to drive us there and take us home. So
nice.
A couple of 14-year-old kids.
Yeah, I used to have to drive people home because my sisters were all older, and so they would partake, and then I would have to drive home.
Yep. Okay, well, I think we've talked long enough, and I can't thank you enough for the work you do and the work that you will continue to do for us. But I think if people wanted to reach out to you, is there a good way to do that?
You can reach out to me by my email, which is mhaney@dgso.org. Or
Haney.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can also call me at 785-813-9055.
Okay. Yeah, I can't stress enough to people is that you don't have to get arrested or go through the system just to get services or get to have us step out and help you. We're here. We love doing preventative maintenance as well. We prefer it because it can really pay off in the long run. But yeah, we're here to help in any way, shape, or form. So
absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
You.
I love having you with us, and I love working with you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you. We'll probably have you back on at some point so we can talk more about horrible things.
Cool. Yeah. Can't wait.
All right. Well, thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.